I want to pick up on the theme that was prevalent yesterday, and for those of you who weren't here, we're very privileged to have Doran Acemoglu, who won the Nobel Prize while he was here. I mean, this is an incredible first. And along with another Nobel Prize winner, Professor Chinglis, they stressed the fact that institutions matter. And in fact, in what we're doing in terms of civil defense and protecting people, it's institutions that matter. So let's go to the next. Whoops, I can do this here, I think. Well, next slide. I will have a few slides. Next slide, please. Okay. What can we learn in the last, and there was an example from Matti, but what we can learn from ancient and recent extreme events in terms of disaster management? That we always have to think of the worst case scenario. What made the disaster in Matti quite different is the fact that not only they had not thought of the worst, of the worst case scenario, and they were not prepared for it, but also the crisis management. I think there cannot be a greater mistake than not thinking of the worst case scenario. And it is here that international organizations such as UNESCO and the World Meteorological Organization have a role to play in terms of actually guiding member nations and the world zeitgeist in terms of when it comes to crisis management, thinking of the worst case scenario. There is a room for probabilistic assessments, and this has a lot to do with the design of infrastructure, with businesses in terms of planning and deciding where to invest, and in terms of protection and resilience. But when it comes to saving and protecting lives, one always has to think of the worst case scenario. Next one. And let me tell you here what I mean by the worst case scenario. We looked earlier, I think it went a little bit too fast, but that's okay. We talked earlier about Matti. Matti was a disaster in 2018, but look what happened in the United States in August, on the 8th of August of 2023, about a year ago. There was a fire, attacked the town of Lahaina. Lahaina is about a population of about 10,000, about the same size as Matti. It took the fire about 2 hours to go to the shoreline, as opposed to Greece and the handling that took place during the fire in Rhodos, which was just about 2 weeks before the fire in Maui. Rhodos and Maui are about the same size, both of them touristy islands, both of them get about 2.5 million per year. In the case of Maui, there was absolutely no warning, no evacuation orders. About 100 people died as the fire swept through from the ring road of Lahaina to the beach. About the same time, the fire took about 2.5 hours in the case of Matti to go in from Neos Voutsas to the beach. No evacuation orders. That changed the United States, and part of it has been due to very aggressive lobbying on my part, just like I did in Greece, for the 1112, to actually have a national system for wireless emergency alerts. This is one article in the Wall Street Journal. There was another piece in the New York Times, that opinion piece. And here I have one picture from Lahaina, and the picture is worth 1,000 words. The structure that you see there surviving is a wooden structure, a 100-year-old structure that a few years before the fire had updated itself to current code. And in fact, the house survived exactly the way you see it. The fire passed through absolutely nothing. I think there's a huge lesson here in terms of how we look at disasters. I want to comment a little bit about another portion that, at least, this is the fact that the United States didn't handle it all well. One part in the United States are handling fairly well, And this is the response to extreme floods. This is from the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration website. What you see here, what the little points, I mean, this is the current prediction of the flooding. You can see all the different red squares on the Florida Panhandle. You can see all those places where there are predictions. These are called hydrographs. This is very, very old technology of actually predicting how quickly the water level rises and how quickly the water level will drop. And as you see there with the points is the projection how quickly the water level will drop. And down underneath, you see the history of the flood. This is the kind of technology that we don't have yet in Greece. I know that the minister is planning on it. I mean, I think it's extremely important to use satellite observations and actually, leapfrog all that entire technology and go well into the 21st century and use satellites to be able to do, these predictions because they're extremely important.
Professor Synolakis, I'm sorry to interrupt.
One last slide.
Okay.
So I want to remind you here of the consequences of not thinking about the worst-case scenarios. And this is not just in natural disasters, but also in man-made disasters. So, ending, again, I want to stress the importance of institutions in helping us, in helping people. I mean, this is civil defense. It's the one endeavor where institutions matter. International institutions, national institutions, and government in terms of protecting people. Because this is something that people cannot do alone. And just like in the case of Mati, just like in the case of Maui, just like in the case of Daniel, just like in the case of Milton, I mean, we rely on government to actually issue timely warnings and save lives. And we have seen in the last 2 years, in the last 5 years since Mati, what happens in Mati, what happened in Maui, what happens in Daniel, what happens in Hurricane Milton. And this is a huge lesson for us. Thank you very much.